So as some of you may have realized by now, my content is very heavily inspired by the late Technoblade. However, you may have also wisely deduced a crucial difference between me and Technoblade. I am not good at the game. What's that you say? I don't have millions of followers and have gone down in YouTube history as one of the greatest Minecraft content creators of all time and an effectively canonized Minecraft saint? Well, those are just little itty bitty details. We don't need to focus on those. The point is, I'm not very good at the game I have dedicated my channel towards, despite having been playing it for over 8 years consecutively. And I am fully willing to admit that. It's why I include so many clips of me messing up in the game, because failure is funny. Which is why today we're going to be talking about one of Europe's greatest minds and one of my personal favorite philosophers, Desiderius Erasmus. Born around 1466 in Rotterdam, Erasmus had a tough upbringing after he was orphaned around the age of 17. The loss deeply affected the young Erasmus, and he quickly entered a new phase of his life in devotion to religion. Now, Erasmus was a devoted Catholic, and despite the oncoming Reformation, remained so his whole life. However, this does not mean that Erasmus was not critical of the Catholic Church. He was, in fact, very much so. Along with John Wycliffe and Thomas More, whom he was a personal friend of, he is often remembered as the precursor to the Reformation, which will likely receive its own video later in this series. What separated Erasmus from the Reformation, however, was his desire to internally and peacefully reform the Church. Since Erasmus was devoutly religious and devoutly Catholic, he saw many goods of the Church and feared the idea of a schism. Therefore, he advocated for an internal series of reforms rather than a radical break from the Church. Think of Erasmus and Luther as construction workers, where Erasmus wants to remodel the house and take off a few unnecessary wings, maybe add some new ones, and Luther wants to burn it to the ground and build a new one up from scratch, but with some sick new laser turrets and lava boats, which sounds rad, but is pretty dangerous and violates a lot of building codes. As a part of this reform movement, Erasmus wrote a lot. He often criticized the Catholic clergy subtly in his writings and refused to take hard positions in the Catholic Curia. While Erasmus was critical, he was not violent. He consistently stayed true to his principles. So, what were those principles? On theological issues, Erasmus advocated for basic things like getting rid of the selling of indulgences. To present what indulgences are, think of it like this. Imagine a priest, but instead of being a regular priest whose purpose is to help you get closer to God, he's actually an insurance agent trying to sell insurance for your soul in the afterlife. Principally, by taking money in exchange for scraping some of those sins off the book. Erasmus and many others argued that it wasn't clear if the church even had the power to do this, and even if it did, it was blatantly corrupt and wrong. However, on a broader scale, Erasmus advocated a life of moderation, impartiality, consideration, and most importantly, education. The word philosophy means love of wisdom, and few people of his time loved wisdom more than Erasmus. It was from him that Erasmus developed this incredibly progressive philosophy, humanism. Humanism can be effectively summed up as such: tolerance, balance, and goodness. Humanism is the idea that people are born with the potential to be good, and that through a moderated, tolerant, and good life we can achieve salvation. The philosophy has since evolved beyond Erasmus's original Christian version into a newer, more secular version. But Erasmus was very much focused on salvation through good works in life. He wrote many works on this: The Complaint of Peace, Education of a Christian Prince, On the Institution of Christian Marriage, and most importantly to today's stories, In Praise of Folly. I will briefly go through these. The Complaint of Peace focuses as a criticism of the Christian princes of his day and their greedy warlike nature. It represents Erasmus's early views on tolerance and necessity for Christian brotherhood, rejecting war except when it became absolutely necessary, and embracing peace, compromise, and tolerance. He felt that Christian princes and kings should not fight but treat one another as brothers. Education of a Christian Prince focuses on the education of the young Charles V of Spain, effectively teaching Erasmus's doctrine of humanism. It is also being called the first true challenge to Machiavelli, in that it is effectively the opposite of Machiavellian doctrine. For those who don't know, Machiavelli taught that a prince should rule through force and fear. Erasmus, on the contrary, taught that a prince should rule through wisdom, respect, and love, and should endeavor for peace rather than greedy wars and expansion. On the institution of Christian marriage is perhaps one of Erasmus's most interesting works, as it established him as very progressive for its time. He believed that women should be treated equally to men in a marriage, that both parties should have right to divorce, and that people should marry out of love and friendship rather than communal pressure or political motives. Finally, we read Erasmus's most famous work, In Praise of Folly. In Praise of Folly teaches us many things about the flaws in the Catholic Church and ourselves, but most importantly, it tells us to love and laugh. In Praise of Folly establishes the simple fact that we are all fools at heart. No matter how wise we think we are, every person has their blind spot, and everyone messes up. It's part of being human. Therefore, Erasmus advocates that we understand the fact we are all fools at heart, and that we laugh along too. Don't beat yourself up for what you cannot be, but love yourself for what you are. The importance of humanism in Western thought cannot be underestimated, and Erasmus is called the Prince of Humanism for a reason. Humanism has almost certainly affected your life in more ways than you realize, from how you think or how others act around you. So what's the Minecraft connection for today? I am not very good at this game. I've never played Skyblock before, and I have a slow reaction time, which means I struggle to do basic things in the game. But that's perfectly okay. I love watching myself hilariously fail at the game as much as everybody else. The point is, I'm messing around and having fun, and so can you. Minecraft is a game where you can just sit back for a few hours or a few days and do whatever you want. There might be consequences like dying, but you can always recover in the game. Minecraft is a game where you're allowed to make a fool of yourself and dust off and continue anyhow. That is the beauty of the game. That is, of course, unless you're Technoblade, because Technoblade never dies!